What's going on, y'all? Masterpiece back at it again, and I'm here with another question as a vegan. If you lived in an age where owning people was lawful and legal, would you participate in that trade, in the slavery, in the owning of people? Would you participate? Would you buy products made from slaves and indentured servants? Would you support that plantation by buying their products? If the answer is no, then you have to ask yourself, why is it okay to do it to animals today? Because remember, back in those days, humans were scientifically shown to be less than their oppressors. So they would have a bunch of scientific papers and articles and books explaining how the people that they are enslaving is actually a lesser form of human or an earthling, and they need to be enslaved or controlled, and the savagery needs to be taken out of them and they need to be civilized. That was the mindset. Today, there is a growing number of people that are saying animals are earthlings as well, and they have their own lives, they have their own will, and their own reason for being. And they want to live, and they want to see their young being raised by themselves, and they want to die naturally of old age. Otherwise, they wouldn't run from the blade. So, if in today's day and age, we see that eating flesh and eating dairy and eggs is propagated as good for you and natural and the thing to do, even if you're pregnant, then you have to understand that you're facing the same type of propaganda that our ancestors were facing back when they thought it was okay to own human beings. Because back in those days, they propagated that darker people in India, Tibet, wherever, North America, the Caribbeans, they were brainwashed into thinking that these people who are native to those areas are less than human. They're savage. They're wild. They need colonization. Today, we have the same thing. Commercials for beef, commercials for cheese and dairy and eggs. Propaganda in all throughout the stores, all on the radios. So we're dealing with the same level of brainwashing concerning earthlings who are not today seen as equal, just the same way how back ages ago a person like me would not be considered equal to a lighter skinned being, to a Caucasian. It's the same paradigm. And today it is lawful and legal to eat beef and to kill cattle and chickens and pigs. Just like it was lawful back in those days to do whatever you wanted to another human being as long as they were deemed lesser than the Caucasian, lesser than the dominant race at the time. So if you could say so easily, oh, I would have been against slavery, I would have been against owning people, I would have been against all of that. Yet today, you are eating meat and thinking it's okay, and dairy and eggs and thinking it's okay, that the victims involved deserve it or they were made for that purpose. Well, then you have just been brainwashed and brought in to the same manner of thought that those slave owners bought into. The perpetrator of the crime can never be more moral or better than the victim. You know, how can we say that we are higher and better people while we're the ones that are murdering billions? I think the last check is like 80-90 billion of land animals every year. How is the person that is paying for the slaughter and committing the slaughter or shopping for it at the grocery store, how are they better than the person or the individual that is suffering? Every age has its wrongdoings and every age has its abolitionists. Women rights, native rights, aboriginal rights, black rights, African rights, African American. You know, all of these are the same thing. So ask yourself that question. If you're eating meat you are propagating slavery and kidnapping and rape and all the stuff that goes with the industrial farming. If you pay for it and you eat it, you're supporting it. You're creating a demand. And somebody has to fill that. Because people do whatever they can for money these days. Just to survive. So ask yourself the question. If you think slavery is wrong today, then what makes you any different than your ancestors of back in the day who used to own slaves? If you lived back then, 400, 500 years ago, earlier, that you would be dedicated to abolishing it, and you would sneak out and set slaves free, and you would do whatever you did to the slave owner and let their slaves go. If you agree with that, then you should be vegan today. Because black people were once thought of as less than human and were treated worse than animals. So if you could mentally go back and say, hey, that's wrong, then why isn't it wrong today? Remember, you're under a lot of brainwashing, a lot of forced media upon you to think it's okay, just like they were back in the day. So if you disagree with owning Earthlings then you should disagree with owning Earthlings now, and you got to speak up and say something about it. And you're going to feel much better for it. You're going to feel a lot healthier. But that's a question that you must think about. If you disagree with slavery and you are eating meat, then you are propagating the same thing that you disagree with. And that is going to affect your karma. This is Master Peace. Much love, peace, power, and protection. Respect.